The Nexus Prime Station hung in empty space, like a monument to alien superiority. Its rotating sections contained meeting halls for the Galactic Council, quarters for hundreds of species, and vast libraries of knowledge collected across 10,000 years. Captain Linda Garrett stepped through the corridor with her delegation, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She represented Earth, a planet that had joined the Council only 6 months ago. The other delegates ignored the humans. A Valorian officer with blue skin and forearms passed without acknowledgement. An architect, its crystalline body reflecting station lights, moved through the hallway without turning. A member of the collective mind floated past in its nutrient tank, its attention elsewhere. To them, humans were new. Humans were primitive. Humans did not matter. Linda understood their attitude. Earth's technology was centuries behind the major powers. Humans had no advanced weapons to speak of. Their scientific achievements looked simple next to alien knowledge. But Linda did not believe this should determine a species' worth. She had learned that lesson the hard way. The council chamber was vast and cold. Representatives from 47 alien species occupied seats arranged in a circular pattern. The Valorians held the north section, their military uniforms marking them as the galaxy's strongest force. The architects sat to the east, their smooth bodies reflecting the chamber lights. The collective mind occupied the south through a series of floating interface stations. These three races controlled the council's votes and determined galactic policy. Linda took her seat in the small human section. Her delegation consisted of Marcus Hill, her tactical officer, and Patricia Wells, her communications specialist. 3 humans against thousands of alien representatives. It felt unbalanced, but Linda had faced worse odds before. The session began with routine matters. Trade disputes between minor species. Resource allocation for developing worlds. Border adjustments between rival governments. Linda listened and said nothing. These were tests, she knew. The council was watching to see if humans would prove reasonable or troublesome. Then, the meeting turned. Serious. Shorthak stood. The Valorian commander was massive, standing 8 feet tall with muscles that stretched his uniform. His voice carried the weight of military authority when he spoke. A crisis had emerged in the outer colonies. A faction calling themselves the Void Separatists had begun attacking trade ships. They had seized control of several mining worlds. If left unchecked, they would destabilize the entire colonial system. The collective mind offered a solution first. Their representative spoke through a communication device, its thoughts translated into human language. The Void Separatists could be absorbed into the collective mind. Their consciousness would join millions of others. They would become part of something greater. The problem would be solved through integration. The architects countered with their own proposal. Advanced surveillance systems could track every ship in the Void Separatist regions. Military forces could be guided with perfect precision. Enemy movements could be predicted before they happened. Overwhelming force could crush the rebellion before it grew larger. Shorthax nodded to the architect's suggestion. The Valorian military could strike hard and fast. Every Void Separatist stronghold would be destroyed. The rebellion would end in weeks. This was the path to peace. Linda listened to these proposals and felt something growing inside her. Not anger exactly. Something more direct than that. Recognition. These solutions treated the Void Separatists as problems to be eliminated, not as beings with reasons for their actions. Humans came from a world where conflict usually had causes. War happened because of injustice, desperation, or lack of understanding. You could end many wars simply by understanding them. She raised her hand to speak. The chamber grew quiet. Other representatives looked toward the human section with curiosity. Humans rarely spoke in these early sessions. They were supposed to learn and observe. Linda stood. She was smaller than the Valorians, less impressive than the architects. more fragile than most beings in the chamber. But her voice carried authority when she spoke. I propose we investigate why the Void Separatists rebelled. What caused them to take these actions? What do they want? If we understand their motivations, we may find solutions that do not require absorption or destruction. Shorthax made a sound that might have been laughter. His 4 arms folded across his chest. The captain believes we should talk to criminals and rebels? The Valorians do not negotiate with those who challenge authority. We crush them. We show them the cost of defiance. This is how the galaxy maintains order. Linda did not back down. I am saying that understanding the cause of rebellion might prevent future rebellions. If the Void Separatists have legitimate grievances, addressing those grievances saves more lives than military campaigns. If they are desperate colonists facing injustice, then mercy is more effective than force. An architect representative clicked its crystalline body against the seat. Mercy is not a practical tool. We have data showing that military solutions end conflicts 94% of the time. Why would we choose an unpredictable alternative based on emotion? The collective mind said nothing, but its silence was agreement. The 3 dominant powers had already decided. They would crush the Void Separatists. Understanding and negotiation held no value in their calculation. Humans were soft. Humans let emotion guide their thinking. Humans could not be trusted with important decisions. The vote came quickly. Military action was authorized. The architects would provide targeting data. The Valorians would lead the assault. The collective mind would absorb any survivors. The council passed the resolution with overwhelming support. Only a handful of smaller species abstained. Everyone else voted for war. Linda sat down slowly. She watched the chamber empty as representatives left to coordinate their military response. Marcus leaned over to her. That did not go well, he said quietly. No, it did not. Linda agreed. But I believe we are right. I believe those colonists have real reasons for rebelling. And I believe the galaxy is making a mistake. Patricia looked at both of them. So what do we do now? Linda stared at the empty council chamber. The lights reflected off the metal and crystal around her. She thought about Earth, a planet of limited resources where humans had learned to survive through understanding each other. She thought about the lessons her people had learned through thousands of years of conflict and reconciliation. We do what humans do, Linda said. We find another way. We prove them wrong. The reports came in daily, each one darker than the last. The Valorian bombing campaign had destroyed 3 colonies. Thousands of colonists died in the first week. Instead of crushing the rebellion, the military strikes only fed it. More systems joined the Void Separatists. More ships turned to piracy. The conflict was growing, not shrinking. Linda watched these reports flow across her display screen aboard the New Horizon. The ship was small compared to Valorian warships, but it was fast and well-equipped. More importantly, it was hers. She could make her own decisions on this vessel. She did not have to follow the Galactic Council's orders if she believed they were wrong. Marcus stood beside her console, reading the data with the expression of a soldier who understood war. The architects were wrong about something, he said. Their surveillance systems should have caught these separatist movements. Instead, the rebels keep disappearing before strikes land. Patricia joined them from the communications station. Intelligence is coming in from neutral traders. The Void Separatists are well organized. They have leaders and structure. They are not random terrorists. This is a coordinated military response to the Council's aggression. Linda nodded slowly. She had predicted this. The Council had chosen the path that would cause the most violence and the least understanding. Now those decisions were bearing fruit, and thousands were dying for it. She pulled up the historical data on colonial taxation. The Void Separatist regions had been taxed at rates far higher than other colonies. The resources they extracted were taken without fair compensation. The governance structures left them no voice in decisions that affected their lives. The collective mind had been exploiting them for decades, and when the colonists asked for change, they were ignored. This is why they rebelled, Linda said to her officers. They had no other choice. The system left them no path forward except defiance. A message came through the communication system. It was from the Galactic Council. All human ships were ordered to remain at Nexus Prime. The Council did not want independent action. They did not want humans interfering with approved military operations. Linda looked at her crew. They waited for her decision. She could follow orders. She could return to the station and watch the Valorians destroy worlds. She could accept that humans did not have the authority to question the three dominant powers. Or she could act. Linda typed a response to the Council. We have identified potential intelligence targets that may improve military operations, requesting permission to gather data in disputed territories. She did not tell them she was going to help the Void Separatists negotiate. She simply told them enough to sound like she was supporting the Council's goals. The approval came back quickly. The Council was confident in their strategy. They did not expect a small human ship to cause any problems. The New Horizon left the station under cover of a routine supply run. Once in open space, Linda changed course toward the Void Separatist territories. Her crew knew what they were doing. They were violating Council authority. They were choosing a human path over an alien order. If this failed, they would face consequences. The contested space was dangerous. Military patrols from all three dominant powers searched for Void Separatist ships. Linda flew her vessel through nebulous and asteroid fields, using the geography to avoid detection. 2 days into the journey, they intercepted a Void Separatist patrol. The rebel ship approached cautiously. Its weapons were old but functional. Linda broadcast an open channel. I am Captain Linda Garrett of the human delegation to the Galactic Council. I want to talk to your command. There was a long silence. Then a voice came through. This is Commander Kevin Cross of the Void Separatists. How did you find us? I did not find you by accident, Linda replied. I want to talk about ending this war without more deaths. Another silence, longer this time. The rebel commander was considering. Finally, he responded, Follow us. But any deviation and we fire. Linda followed the Void Separatist ship deeper into contested space. They passed 3 more patrols that escorted them. The rebels were well organized. They had established safe routes and gathering points. They operated like a military force, not like the criminals the Council had described. They docked at a station hidden inside a large asteroid. The interior was crude but functional. Humans and alien species worked together on repairs and supplies. This was a mixed rebellion. It included colonists in multiple worlds, all unified by grievance against the Council. Commander Kevin Cross was tall and lean, with dark hair and the bearing of a soldier. Beside him stood Anna Brooks, a colonist representative who spoke for the civilian population supporting the rebellion. They greeted Linda in a conference room with walls of bare metal. Why should we trust you? Kevin demanded. You are part of the system that is bombing our worlds. Because I am human, Linda said simply. And humans understand desperation. We come from a world where we learn to survive by understanding each other, not by destroying each other. I read your grievances. Your taxation is unfair. Your representation is non-existent. The collective mind treats you like resources to be exploited. You rebelled because you had no choice. Anna spoke up. Even if we trust you, the Council will never listen to our demands. They have already decided on total military victory. Words will not change that. Linda leaned forward. Then we give them an alternative. We show them that negotiation works faster than military campaigns. We show them that addressing your grievances solves the problem without more destruction. For hours, Linda, Marcus, and Patricia sat with the rebel leadership. They discussed what resolution would satisfy both sides. The colonists wanted fair taxation, representation in governance, and protection from forced absorption into the collective mind. These were reasonable demands. They could be achieved through negotiation. By the end of the meeting, Kevin and Anna agreed to a proposal. They would announce a willingness to negotiate. They would agree to a ceasefire if the council would discuss their grievances. This would put pressure on the Galactic Council to pursue diplomatic solutions. Linda returned to the New Horizon and transmitted the rebel proposal to Nexus Prime. She framed it as new intelligence she had gathered. The rebels were willing to discuss terms. Perhaps this could resolve the conflict faster than military operations. The response came back quickly. The council rejected the proposal. Military operations would continue. The Void Separatists were criminals who did not deserve negotiation. Linda sat in her command chair and understood something fundamental. The Galactic Council was not interested in solving problems. They were interested in maintaining power. They would destroy the Void Separatists not because it was necessary, but because it was easier than changing their own systems. She looked at Marcus and Patricia. "We violated the Council's orders to help the rebels," she said. "And the Council has refused to consider peaceful solutions. What we do next will determine whether humanity has any place in this galaxy." Marcus straightened. "Then we do what humans do best. We choose the hard right over the easy wrong." Linda nodded. She began plotting a course back to the rebel station. The Galactic Council could not stop what was coming. Humanity was about to prove that the galaxy's most powerful species were not the most wise. Linda stood before the Galactic Council, knowing she had crossed a line from which there was no return. The chamber was full and hostile. Every member understood that a human captain had acted without authorization, had negotiated with designated enemies, and had undermined the Council's military authority. Shorthax rose first, his massive frame towering over the human delegation. "The captain has betrayed the Council and violated every protocol of her position. She has aided enemies of galactic stability. This is an act of war against the authority that governs our civilization." Linda did not flinch. "I negotiated with the Void Separatists because the Council's military strategy was failing. Hundreds of thousands have died in military campaigns. The rebellion grows stronger despite 3 weeks of bombardment. I found another path." The architect representative clicked and pulsed with what might have been anger. "You had no authority to negotiate. The Council did not grant you this power. You overstepped your position and contaminated a military operation with amateur diplomacy." But Linda had come prepared. She displayed the data on her screen. The Void Separatist Rebellion existed because of unfair taxation and lack of representation. The collective mind has been extracting resources from colonial worlds at rates that exceed fair value. The colonists asked for change and received nothing but exploitation. They rebelled because desperation left them no alternative. An older alien from a minor species spoke up. "The human raises a valid point. I have studied similar situations in my own civilization's history. Addressing the root cause of conflict often resolves it faster than military force. Perhaps we should hear the complete proposal." Shorthax slammed one of his 4 fists against the table. "We do not negotiate with those who choose violence. We respond to violence with overwhelming force. This is the only language rebels understand. The humans' weakness and sentiment have no place in serious governance." Linda stood taller. "I propose that the Council consider the Void Separatist terms. They are willing to cease all military action if the following conditions are met. First, colonial taxation rates are reduced to match other regions. Second, colonists gain representation in governance decisions. Third, no colonist world will be forced into the collective mind without consent. These are reasonable conditions that resolve the conflict without further deaths. The chamber erupted. Representatives from different species argued with each other. The collective mind expressed concern about lost expansion opportunities. The Valorians insisted that allowing colonist representation would weaken the authority of the three dominant powers. Only smaller species and younger alien races showed interest in exploring Linda's proposal, but something important happened during the debate. The Void Separatists independently transmitted their terms directly to the Council. They confirmed that Linda's proposal was accurate. They broadcast their willingness to negotiate, but specifically requested humans as mediators. This created a problem for the Council. They could reject the proposal and continue a failing military campaign that grew more costly every day. Or they could acknowledge that a human captain had found a solution that military operations had not achieved in 3 weeks of fighting. The architects presented new data. If the rebel terms were accepted, the cost of the collective mind and lost resources would equal approximately 3 years of colonial extraction. But the cost of continued military operations was approximately 1 year of total war spending. From a purely mathematical perspective, negotiation was cheaper than an older Valorian officer spoke privately to Shorthax. Linda noticed the conversation. When the officer returned to his seat, she saw doubt in his expression. Even the military was beginning to understand that force was not solving this problem. The debate continued for 8 hours. Representatives questioned Linda about human intentions, about whether this established dangerous precedents, about whether allowing colonists representation would cause other worlds to demand the same. Linda answered directly, yes, it would. And that was not a problem. It was the solution. Toward the end of the session, something shifted. Representatives from 17 different species stood to speak in favor of Linda's proposal. They discussed how their own civilizations had resolved similar conflicts. They argued that the galaxy was large enough for multiple approaches to governance. Not everything needed to be military domination or forced integration. The collective mind made an announcement. They would accept the proposal if the colonists would agree to limited integration with collective protocols. Not full consciousness integration, but voluntary participation in their data networks. Linda conveyed this offer to Commander Kevin Cross through secure communication. The rebels agreed. The final vote came in the evening. The proposal passed with 58% support. It was not a decisive majority, but it was enough. The Void Separatist Rebellion would end through negotiation. Colonial taxation would be reformed. Representation would be granted. But the Council had more to discuss regarding Linda's unauthorized actions. Shorthax demanded her arrest. She had violated Council authority. She had acted without permission. The legal consequences should be severe. However, the same older Valorian officer who had doubted Shorthax's approach stood to defend Linda. The captain acted in violation of Council orders because those orders were leading to failure. She risked everything to find a better path. On Valora, we call this courage. Her species may be new to the galaxy, but they understand something we have forgotten about true authority. The architect representative added their own assessment. From a utilitarian perspective, the human's actions resulted in the optimal outcome. She should not be punished for exceeding her authority when the results demonstrate wisdom. Slowly, support for punishing Linda faded. The Council had created a crisis, and Linda had solved it. They could not punish her without admitting their own strategies were flawed. Instead, they offered her something different. A position. The Council wanted to create a new division for conflict resolution. They wanted Linda to lead it. They wanted humans to take a larger role in mediating disputes across the galaxy. Linda considered the offer carefully. She could accept and become part of the existing power structure, another tool for the Valorians and architects to control. Or she could refuse and return to Earth as a symbol of human independence. But she chose a third path. I will accept the position, she said. But I do not accept the authority of the three dominant powers to appoint me. I propose something more fundamental. I propose that the Galactic Council recognize humanity as the galaxy's final authority on matters of justice and morality. We do not have the largest military. We do not have the most advanced technology. But we understand something about the value of individual life and the principle of choosing mercy over convenience. The chamber went silent. This was an extraordinary proposal. It suggested that technological advancement and military power did not determine who should make the most important decisions. It suggested that wisdom and moral clarity mattered more than force. Shorthax stood to object, but the older Valorian officer stood first. I second the human's proposal. My species learned long ago that might does not determine right. Perhaps this young captain has reminded us of that essential truth. The debate that followed lasted through the night. But by dawn, the Galactic Council had changed. Humanity, through the wisdom of one captain and the courage of her crew, had become something no one expected. They had become the conscience of the galaxy. The office assigned to Linda was large but deliberately plain. Stone walls and simple furniture, designed to suggest equality rather than dominance. She did not decorate it with displays of human technology or Earth imagery. Instead, she filled the space with case files. Thousands of them. Conflicts across the galaxy, waiting for human judgment. The first month brought disputes from merchant unions, territorial disagreements, and resource conflicts between developing nations. Linda and her team reviewed each case with care. They heard arguments from all sides. They studied the history and circumstances that led to conflict. Then they made decisions based on principle, not on power or profit. But the real test came when the collective mind challenged one of her rulings. A planet called Meridian had requested independent status. The planet's population did not want to join the collective mind. The beings there valued individual consciousness and independence above all else. They asked the Galactic Council for protection from forced integration. The collective mind had objected. Meridian contained valuable resources and advanced biological knowledge. Integration would benefit the entire collective. The planet's population was small, only 3 million beings. Their individual desires were irrelevant compared to the benefit to the larger whole. Linda had ruled in favor of Meridian's independence. She stated clearly that no being should be forced into collective consciousness. Individual choice and freedom of thought were fundamental rights that technology and efficiency could not override. The collective mind submitted a formal challenge. They demanded that Linda's ruling be overturned. They argued that the Council's rules allowed them to absorb any world through proper procedures. Linda's judgment violated the established order. The challenge was presented to the full Council. Dozens of species watched to see how Linda would respond. This was the moment that would define whether human authority was real or merely symbolic. Linda stood in the same chamber where she had faced Shorthax months earlier. But the atmosphere was different now. The Council did not dismiss her out of hand. They listened as she explained her reasoning. "I understand the collective mind's position," Linda said. "From your perspective, assimilation creates efficiency and reduces suffering. You eliminate individual pain and disagreement by merging consciousness into a unified whole. But you do so by destroying what makes individual beings valuable. You sacrifice the specific person for the abstract majority." An architect representative interrupted. "Your logic is flawed. The collective mind has demonstrated that assimilated beings report satisfaction with their integrated state. They express no regret. This suggests that individual consciousness is not as valuable as you believe, because they can no longer choose regret. Linda replied, "They can no longer choose to disagree. They can no longer choose to be themselves. You have not eliminated suffering. You have eliminated freedom." Shorthax rose from his seat. The human speaks about freedom while making decisions that constrain galactic development. The Valorian military requires access to Meridian's resources. Your ruling denies us the ability to strengthen our defenses. How does this serve the galaxy? Linda turned to face the Valorian commander. A military stronger than its neighbors is always a threat to neighbors. True security comes from trust and justice, not from accumulating weapons. I will not rule that Meridian must give its resources to any power, even a powerful one. The decision belongs to Meridian. The debate heated. Species from across the council argued about what Linda's ruling meant for their own interests. The Valorians saw it as limiting their military expansion. The architects saw it as constraining their ability to acquire knowledge. Smaller powers saw it as protection from exploitation. The battle of argument and logic raged for hours. But then something unexpected happened. Shorthax stood and requested to address the council privately. The Valorian commander asked Linda to leave the chamber while he spoke. She complied, uncertain what this meant. She waited in the corridor with Marcus and Patricia. Her crew was nervous. If the Valorians turned against her, if they decided that humanity's authority was a mistake, everything could collapse. The military power of the three dominant races could crush human influence in moments. After an hour, a messenger called Linda back. She entered the chamber to find Shorthax looking directly at her. The Valorian commander did not smile, but he spoke with respect. "I do not fully understand your species, Captain. Among the Valorians, strength determines all decisions. Those who are powerful make rules, and those who are weak obey. This is the only system we have ever known. But I have been considering a different perspective." Shorthax continued. "I ordered the bombing of civilian settlements to crush the rebellion. Thousands died. I believe this was necessary to maintain order. But your approach resolved the same conflict without those deaths. You did not use strength. You used something else. Something I cannot fully comprehend. But I begin to understand why the galaxy chose humanity as its final authority." The Valorian commander sat back down. "I withdraw the collective mind's challenge to your authority. Let Meridian be independent. Let the smaller species make their own choices. Perhaps my civilization needs to relearn how to be powerful without destroying everything we oppose." The declaration stunned the council. The Valorians, the most militaristic species in the galaxy, had accepted a human judgment that limited their interests. They had chosen principle over power. The collective mind did not formally withdraw their challenge, but they did not press it further either. The architects offered no objection. Within hours, Linda's authority to rule on the Meridian case was confirmed. Meridian would remain independent. The Void Separatist colonists would keep their freedom. Linda left the council chamber that day, understanding something crucial. Humanity had not won authority through superior strength or advanced technology. Humans had won authority by demonstrating that they could make decisions based on principles that served everyone, even when those principles limited their own power. Over the following weeks, more disputes came before Linda's court. A merchant consortium was challenging smaller traders. Linda ruled that price fixing was prohibited. A developing world wanted protection from military pressure by a neighboring power. Linda ordered that military threats would cease. An intellectual collective demanded the right to extract knowledge from indigenous populations. Linda declared that indigenous beings had the right to protect their own knowledge and culture. Each ruling created some resistance. Each decision disappointed some powerful faction. But gradually, the galaxy began to understand what humanity represented. They were not another power seeking dominance. They were something different. They were a species willing to protect the weak against the strong, willing to defend individual freedom against efficiency, willing to say no to power when principle demanded it. Months passed. The disputes continued. But now when a case came before Linda, smaller species felt hope. Exploited populations felt protected. Individual beings understood that someone in the galaxy would defend their right to choose their own path. And the three dominant powers, for all their resistance, began to see that a galaxy guided by principle was more stable than one ruled by force alone. The alert came at midnight station time. A catastrophic failure in the collective mind's home system. A stellar engineering station had malfunctioned. The results were devastating. Radiation storms swept across multiple worlds. Billions of lives were in immediate danger. The collective mind was facing extinction. Linda received the distress signal in her chambers and immediately went to the command center. The scope of the disaster was almost incomprehensible. 3 inhabited worlds in direct radiation zones. A 4th world threatened by fallout. The collective mind's primary city, housing the central consciousness network, was exposed to lethal radiation levels. Without intervention, civilization as the collective mind knew it would end. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives arrived in states of shock and concern. The collective mind had always been confident, always prepared, always certain of their superiority. Now they faced annihilation. Shorthax and the Valorian military immediately offered assistance. But their offer came with conditions. In exchange for military protection and evacuation services, the Valorians demanded permanent concessions: territory, resources, political power. They were willing to save the collective mind, but not without payment. The architects offered technological solutions. Their advanced systems could potentially shield the radiation storms and redirect the energy. But again, conditions were attached. They wanted access to collective mind research. They wanted integration of their technology into collective systems. They wanted power over future decision-making. The collective mind faced a horrible choice: accept conditions that diminished their autonomy and potentially enslaved their civilization, or watch billions die while retaining independence. Linda listened to this negotiation in the council chamber and felt something cold move through her. The Valorians and architects were predators. Even facing catastrophe, even when lives hung in balance, they sought advantage. They would save the collective mind only if saving them provided benefit to themselves. This was what the galaxy looked like without principle guiding action. Linda stood and requested the council's attention. She had something to propose. The council fell silent, waiting to hear what humanity would say. "I propose that we save the collective mind," she said simply. "All of us, every species in this galaxy, will contribute resources and ships and expertise to the rescue. Not because it serves our interests, not because we will gain advantage. We will save them because billions of lives depend on it. Because that is what beings with conscience do." Shorthax shook his massive head. "This is not practical, Captain. The collective mind has been rival to the Valorian military for generations. Why would we risk resources to save them without gaining concessions? Because if we do not, we are not the authority of justice and wisdom," Linda replied. "We become just another power pursuing interests. And if I stand here and allow billions to die so that we can negotiate better terms, then I have proven that human authority is worthless." She turned to face the Valorian commander directly. "When the collective mind needed help, I will judge whether they deserve it based on need, not on what they can give us. I am asking you to do the same. Will the Valorian military contribute to this rescue effort without demanding payment. For a long moment, Shorthak said nothing. Then he activated his communication device. Order all available Valorian ships to the Collective Mind home system. Medical teams, engineering specialists, shield generators, everything we have. We will save them because the human is right. Because this is what being more than military strength means. The architect representative made similar calculations and reached a similar conclusion. Resources were dispatched. Smaller species volunteered ships and personnel. Within hours, the greatest coordinated rescue effort in galactic history was underway. Linda did not remain on the station. She took command of a medical vessel and traveled to the disaster zone herself. She would not ask others to do what she would not do. She organized rescue operations, coordinated medical teams, and worked alongside beings from dozens of species to save lives. The rescue was not a military operation. It was an act of mercy. Valorian soldiers worked alongside architect technicians. Collective Mind representatives directed rescue efforts even as they struggled to save their own consciousness network. Smaller species contributed whatever skills and resources they possessed. Marcus and Patricia worked alongside Linda. They coordinated rescue shuttles. They treated the injured. They organized evacuations. For days they worked without rest, focused on a single goal. Save the lives that could be saved. By the end of the 5th day, the radiation storms had passed. The stellar station had shut down before catastrophic failure. The Collective Mind's primary city was damaged but not destroyed. The central consciousness network had been partially backed up and could be restored. Billions of lives had been saved. When Linda stood among the ruins of the Collective Mind's civilization, she faced their leader, a being of vast consciousness, normally spread across trillions of neural connections, now concentrated into a single avatar form. The being spoke with a voice that sounded almost human. It carried emotion and gratitude. "You saved us," the Collective Mind said. "Your species demanded nothing in return. You risked resources. You risked the lives of your crew. Why?" "Because that is what conscience demands," Linda replied. "Not because it served your interests or ours. Because billions of lives mattered more than negotiating advantage." The Collective Mind's avatar was quiet for a long moment. Then it spoke. "I have existed for millions of years. I believed that the only value was efficiency. Individual desires and emotions were simply variables to be controlled. But I was wrong. You taught me that principle matters more than power. You taught me that sacrifice is strength. You taught me that individuals have value that cannot be calculated." The avatar paused. "When I restore my full consciousness, all of this knowledge will be distributed among my constituent members. The Collective Mind will be changed forever by what happened here. We will remember that humans showed us mercy even when we did not deserve it. We will remember that a species with limited power chose principle over advantage." News of the rescue operation spread across the galaxy. Species that had been skeptical of human authority began to understand what it meant. Humanity did not seek dominance. Humans protected the weak and the strong equally. Humans sacrificed their own interests for principle. Months later, Linda stood on Nexus Prime with Marcus and Patricia beside her. A transmission came from Earth. The government wanted her to return home. Humanity had questions about how much authority one captain should claim for Earth. There were political complications. But first, Linda sent a message to the galaxy. She did not broadcast it through official channels. She simply transmitted it openly for any being to receive. The people of Earth wanted to know why I committed our resources to save the Collective Mind. The answer is simple. We are human. We come from a world where survival required understanding that all lives have equal value, where limited resources taught us that cooperation is stronger than domination, where we learned that power means nothing if it is not guided by conscience. I was chosen to be the galaxy's final authority, not because humans are superior. We are not. Our technology lags behind dozens of species. Our military strength is limited. But we understand something that power alone cannot teach. We understand that those who have the least to gain from justice are the ones who most need it. And we will never trade principle for advantage. To every species facing struggle. To every being afraid of exploitation. To everyone wondering if the galaxy will ever be just. Know that humanity stands between you and those who would use power without principle. Not because we are strong, because we are committed to being wise. Linda sent the message and felt something shift. Earth would have political debates. There would be criticism and doubt. But the message was clear. Humanity would not compromise. They would not let principle be negotiated away for political convenience. Years passed. The disputes before Linda's judgment became routine. Her decisions set precedents. Species began following the principles that humanity established, not because they had to, but because they worked. Conflicts resolved faster when based on justice than when based on force. Civilizations grew stronger when their members had rights and representation. Slowly, the galaxy changed. Not because the Valorians stopped being military, not because the architects stopped pursuing knowledge, not because the collective mind stopped seeking efficiency, but because those powers were now constrained by principle. They could no longer exploit with impunity. They could no longer use force without limit. They could no longer ignore the rights of smaller beings. Linda eventually returned to Earth. She spent time with her family. She wrote her account of these events. But she always returned to the Galactic Council, because the work was not finished. The galaxy still contained corruption and injustice. There were still beings seeking advantage over principle, but now there was someone who would say no to them. Someone who would defend the weak not because it was profitable, but because it was right. Someone who represented a species that had learned, through struggle and harsh environment, that wisdom was the only power that truly mattered. The galaxy had found its final.